It's a fascinating thing. And then he's discussing some of the Hermetic symbolism, the doctrine of the Hermetic philosophy, with the male-female person in the right hand holding a compass and the left hand a square. This stands on a dragon under a sphere. I'll show you this figure here in a little bit. An equilateral triangle on a square. The upward pointing is number 1. Here's the symbol here. You can see this very interestingly within the circle. You can see the triangle. You see the triangle right there within the circle. And then you can see the square within the circle, within the triangle. All this symbolism comes together to teach us higher philosophical truths so that we can live a more fulfilled life. So that we can, the scripture puts it this way. The scripture says, be in the world but not of the world. Raise our cares above the menial aspects of just surviving in existence and learn to thrive, learn to share the wealth of true knowledge, which is true power, to understanding who we really are and how that can help us live a better life. And then I'm into his second lecture. I thought I had... Well, anyway, he's discussing the sacred ineffable words in India and in Hinduism. And he goes to the Sanskrit, the Zendavesta, and all that. But this idea that our minds contemplating the symbolisms of the world we live in. Well, for instance, here we go again. I'm in a beautiful part of the country. Why look at me when you can look at the beauty of the world? But the symbolisms of the world are very important to understand. They can point us, literally, these mountains are pointing where? They're not pointing down. That mountain is pointing up. They point us up. That's why mountains anciently were considered the sacred abodes of deity. They took us from the mundane level up into the heavens, up into the spiritual understanding and tuning ins, so to speak, of the heavenly spheres. Because it is from heaven where we originate. We have an immortal soul. And it is to heaven where we're going to go. That's why in ancient times, the Freemasons used to hold their meetings in the valleys and in the mountains so that they could observe the approach of cowans and eavesdroppers, so that they could share the knowledge by themselves, because it's not meant for the mundane of the world. It's meant for those who are seriously wanting to find out the meaning of life. That's the beauty of studying nature. Geometry tunes us in to a fabulous study of nature, an appreciation of where we are, an appreciation of what we are, and an appreciation of the great architect of the universe, of course, because this magnificent creation, all things testify of the Creator. You just have to know how to see and appreciate the interpretation of the symbolisms. That's what Freemasonry does for Freemasons. That's what the contemplation of nature does for all of us. Pike says in his book Esoterica, the symbolism of the blue degrees of Freemasonry. This was just put out by Arturo de Hoyos. The second edition is the revised 2008. He says on page 180, the intellect of man is like the spark from the invisible electricity. I'm not going to tell you the meaning of the 47th proposition of Euclid that is so prominent in Freemasonry. I'm going to let the diamond here be your hint, your natural symbol. The key is the triangle. The 47th problem of Euclid is the Pythagorean theorem. The hint is the triangle. 3. It's everywhere in nature. No matter where you look, you see the triangle. It's the 47th problem of Euclid. It's the triangle. Everywhere we look in nature, we see the triangle. This is the natural symbolism, the natural manifestation of the deity in his creation. And it is the key to the 47th problem of Euclid, dealing with the triangle. Pay attention to this when you're living. Pay attention where you are and observe with your eyes and your intellect, which is a divine spark. There's a very important lesson here in the problem of Euclid, and I'm not going to tell it to you. I'm going to let you explore it on your own in Pike's Esoterica. It's in there, and it's worth looking at. Pike on page 214 says, Mercury represents Hermes, the Greek messenger of the gods, and the divine word. He is at the summit or the apex of an upper triangle and also on the trunk of a tree in the lowest angle of the lower triangle. The theme is, as above, so below. The divine word is here represented as the deity, and also it is represented in nature, the triangles, as well as in man, who is a soul, a spirit, and a body. Pay close attention to this. There's a clue here to the meaning of Masonry, as well as Masonry having parallels with the ancient Egyptian Hermetic philosophy. We symbolize the geometry of nature with our abstract art. This is the theme of the 47th proposition of Euclid. The Hermetic aspect of the symbolism of nature and the meaning of truth and reality is depicted in this diagram. Here's the upper triangle with Mercury at its apex that I was just talking about. Here is the lower triangle with Mercury at its bottom. What is as above is so below, and the world itself can teach us these profound truths. This is why we veil Freemasonry in allegory and symbolism. It's supposed to make you think if you can think. The theme is the Hermetic philosophers adapted the Zarathustran idea expressed by the number 7, which is composed of 3 and 4, which we represent through triangles and squares. The number 3 represents to them the 3 persons in the divine unity. They represented the 3rd by Hermes, or Mercury, the divine word. And the 1st and the 2nd were symbolized by the sun and the moon.